Namaskaram to all, and welcome to the next series of the Vande Guru Paramparam sessions. Uh, Today we have a very interesting panel discussion that we're going to be having, which is going to be on the topic of adaptations in pedagogy in Sanskrit for beginners and schools. So to discuss this topic today, we have a very eminent panel of experienced teachers and educationists. So let me begin by introducing each one of them and taking them into the panel. Firstly, we have Mr. Jagadish Sir. Jagadish sir, welcome to the panel.
Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha. Mr. Jagadish Sir, MA in Computer. It is meant and has been an educationist, donning different hats, various administrative aspects of education. A member of the Board of Studies for the Maharashtra State Board for the Secondary and Higher Secondary Education. He is a subject expert for MSCRT as well as a member of Textbook Writing Committee for Bala Bharat. Conducted several workshops on various subjects like quality management, implementation, learning outcomes, and many more topics. Among his research topics is also the comparative study of epic literature on a education system. So, honored different awards and various awards. I think this time is excuse panelists, they have such a great profile, each one of them. So I'm just repeating myself. Fine. Again, Jagadish sir, welcome. Next we have Ruchita Rane ma'am. Ruchita ma'am.
Namo Namaha. Thank you.
Namo Namaha. Ruchita Rane is a good friend. The most practical the mind business management is good friend. He has been teaching the last and working for doctorate studies currently on the topic of the attitude from the Upanishad and the present day teaching process. A very apt topic for the very personal note. Ma'am, right? So, ma'am, welcome again. I'm very happy to have you in the panel.
Thank you so much.
Have Aditi Madhavan. Aditi, welcome to the panel. Aditi Madhavan is an MA MPhil in Sanskrit. He has been teaching Sanskrit for the last 10 years in different capacities. Presented various research papers and articles, including research of Sanskrit in primary school at the National Sanskrit Conference. And she's also been a member of the Board of Studies for the textbook for classes 8 to 10, 11, and 12. So, Aditi ma'am, welcome to the panel.
I am.
Okay, I'm just getting input that the output, the audio is not very clear, so let me just give a try with. I hope audio is clear now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a very eminent panel with us, Mr. Jagadish Indalkar sir, Ruchita Rane ma'am, Aditi Madhavan ma'am. All of them in the field of teaching Sanskrit. Many of them also involved in various administrative activities of education. And also they have been innovating and trying to rejuvenate the learning of Sanskrit experience in their own ways. So today we are going to be having an interesting panel discussion with all of them on board. So let me start with something, maybe the starting point. All of you have been in the field of teaching Sanskrit for so many years now, and also, as I said, donning different hats, even in the administrative capacities. What, according to you, has been the interest levels that you have seen or observed among the beginners, the students, as well as the parents towards the learning of Sanskrit? What has been the enthusiasm, the interest level? So maybe if I could start with you, Jagdish sir, if you could share your observations on what have you observed as the enthusiasm and excitement levels for this
We,
language.
if you will see in the school education system, the position of Sanskrit is just as a scoring subject. That is the first. Why people are opting of Sanskrit? Because of the it is a scoring. It might be any board. It might be it is an SSC board or CBSE board. They attract student attract because of it is a scoring subject. Then
Right,
it's teachers' passion how to create the interest from scoring to knowledge source subject like that.
right, right. So more of the schools and in the beginning stages, it's more viewed from a scoring subject point of view rather than from an interest level point of view. Okay, Ruchita ma'am, what has been your observation?
It's largely, yes, it is looked upon more as a subject than a language at all to start with. Most often
Hmm.
it is perceived as a subject. When it's actually a language, it's taken up as a subject, and that too a scoring one, like Jagdish sir just said. But I would also like to add another thing. When we are looking at beginners at learning Sanskrit, then we should also take into account those learners who are not necessarily students. So, since this topic is students, as in school students, since the
Right.
topic is pedagogy for beginners, and I do have a bit of quite some experience with teaching those who are not school students. So we have to look at both these, because the approach to both changes when you
Right.
know that there are students who are school students and they look at a subject like a scoring one, then the challenges are different, or the approach has to be different. And while that of those beginners who begin for varied other reasons, so they
Hmm.
already come with an interest. So
Right.
in that case, handling the subject for them and making it even better for them, or the approach, to bring them, sometimes you need to bring them down to a student level of a systematic study pattern. So that's also another thing that we need to see. But yes, with school students, it's largely scoring. And unless they have, been unless they have come in with something like a background from a home, as in a cultural background, then it is a
Hmm.
little different. Then there is another kind of dimension to it. But then, of course,
Hmm.
that is just a negligible percent. You may not even count it as 10%. It would be
Right.
lesser than
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. So what I clearly understand is, yes, you're very right. The pedagogy for beginners and schools, these are two different aspects to it. And as you rightly said, maybe the point that came out is when you look at it as a school subject for the school students in the primary section, secondary sections, it becomes treated more as a subject and more as a language that has to be studied for an exam. There is a specific mark, scoring, and other aspects come into it. But the moment it becomes, it is for a beginner who is learning at a later stage in life for varied reasons, probably the interest levels are higher there because they are starting it for a purpose. But in school, it is a part of a curriculum which goes on, right?
True.
Aditi ma'am, what has been your observation? Like you have also been dealing with students and probably also this kind of beginners. So what has been your observation? Is it something similar to what Jagdish sir and Rachita ma'am has said, or you do have something more to add in respect of the enthusiasm aspect?
Yes, I can say I'm fortunate enough to start with actually kids. So I started teaching to nursery kids from nursery.
Oh, okay.
So, uh, so there it was like their extracurricular activity.
Huh.
So obviously, when we talk about kids, they are always receptive. Whatever we give, they are ready to receive it. So the enthusiasm, their enjoyment, they actually enjoy playing with Sanskrit, singing with in Sanskrit. So they are totally interested,
Hmm.
and their parents are also.
Hmm.
Their
Hmm. Hmm.
parents actually want them to learn Sanskrit, being maybe ancient language, language of India, traditional language.
Hmm.
So parents are equally interested and
Hmm.
enthusiastic. Coming
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
later part, because I have got opportunity to teach all kinds of age groups, I can say, right from
Right.
nursery to adults. So
Right.
coming to the next part of school, middle school, uh, though it is considered as subject or scoring subject, it is optional subject. So they opt for it out of interest maybe, or for marks, but they are interested, they are curious to see what this language is.
Hmm.
So again I found that interest level, and even in college, so
Right.
students are interested. I can say 80% of students, they are interested to learn
Hmm.
Sanskrit, to get connected with Sanskrit.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. I think from what all of you have said, it actually breaks down the problem into multiple areas. Like you mentioned about the nursery, right? This is even before a scoring or a marks, it comes into the picture. You are trying to inject something at a very, very basic level, from a very, very early level. Then you have the in-between stage of the school, which you rightly said, which all of you pointed out is the part of the scoring, the exams, and other aspects. And then comes a much later stage when you start Sanskrit, which is again out of passion or interest. So it's like a wave; it keeps going with different stages in life as well. Now, also dealing with these, now, since all of you beautifully put this background through, what challenges have you faced with each of these categories of learners? So if I might say the initial categories, as Aditi ma'am, you rightly said about the really young children, right, who are not even aware of these scoring and other things, have still not entered into their head, right? They are still in the initial aspect of learning. Then you have this in between where you have the school subjects and other things, but it is still getting shaped. And then you have the later part, who people who come back to this at a later stage. So, what challenges have you seen in each of these groups of people? Maybe Jagdish sir, we start with you. Based on your experience, what challenges have you seen when you impart education, especially in Sanskrit language, in the acceptance or in how they take it?
So, if you will think as a challenge or what challenge about the challenge, uh, we need to see the pedagogical analysis of each aspect. Just like Aditi said, that she used to teach first nursery or pre-primary, that
Hmm.
is syllables or might be pedagogy derived by her itself, because it is not government directives as such for
Hmm.
pre-primary till standard 6. When we
Hmm.
see,
Hmm.
so each teacher's background as well as what teacher is doing framework for their audience or their her student, that is differ from school to school.
Hmm. Hmm.
So universalization of the syllables till pre-primary and primary is not there in India of pedagogy of Sanskrit. As
Okay.
NCRT given the textbooks from standard 6 onwards, or SSC board in Maharashtra doing the syllables from standard 8 onwards.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
if you take your standard from nursery to standard 12 as a system of education,
Hmm.
Sanskrit can be fit in various levels.
Right.
It is
Right.
not unique. It is not like that XYZ school, he did nursery or junior senior with Sanskrit and come in ABC school, then he should know this. Like other subjects, learning
Hmm.
outcomes are decided by government body. For
Hmm.
Sanskrit, those learning outcomes are not decided till 6th standard or 8th standard
Right. Right.
by any government body. So it
Okay.
is a teacher centric approach.
Understood. So what you're saying is that you're speaking more from a framework perspective, from a
Yeah.
structure perspective,
Unless and
that there is
until we
no
see the
systematic.
framework,
Yeah.
yes,
So
then
what you're
only
saying, yeah.
we can universalize or you can generalize the Sanskrit pedagogy.
Right.
Challenge of the Sanskrit pedagogy is that it is a more teacher centric rather than society whatever wants or whatever are there. Like
Right.
Ruchita madam said, she used to teach beginners by XYZ curriculum. But
Right.
those
Right.
beginners are that might be that curriculum is a pedagogy and not based on the andrology. When we are
Understood.
thinking about the pedagogy, we have to think the andrology also, because its aspects are different,
Right.
needs are different, and according to, even though beginners of bigger age will come to us as a Sanskrit teacher कि हमको बाबा संस्कृत पढ़ना है, like that we will start their education uh, just like a kids only, mama nama tava nama bhavata nama, by conversational approach.
Right.
And
Right.
again we are shifting to grammar translation method.
Right. Right. So I think what you're saying, from what I can understand, is the first challenge that we have in the teaching of Sanskrit is a lack of a systemic, approach, right from your pre-primary or whatever that status is, like you have for a maths or for an English or for any of the other subjects, which you have a very systematic way how you approach, and probably there is a lot of research also being done in those areas.
Not
Like
at all.
everybody does a lot of research in the other subjects of how what is to be taught at
In
what.
other subject, that is apart. In other subject, maximum pedagogical research and analysis work
Correct.
is done, and
Correct.
on
Correct.
their findings syllables are framed. But in
Right.
Sanskrit pedagogy is only not established yet.
Understood. So I think this is the first challenge. The big challenge is that
Yes.
the system itself, the framework itself is not available. So it becomes like a free flow left to the teacher. Ruchita ma'am, to ask you, now I have been, of course, if I were to call myself the beginner category, neither the pre-primary
Right.
nor the school, but the beginner category when I did the course under you. So when you also now deal with beginners, you also teach in schools to the school students. So now, from what we heard is that there is no systematic approach given to you to say that this is how people have researched and this is how it should be taught. So, what are the challenges you face? I think the first challenge might be in defining this framework. So, if you could tell us something about that, and when you deliver it to the students, what kind of challenges you face there in actually teaching them the language?
So I would rather say, because it's a challenge, I would look at it as an opportunity rather, than
Hmm,
calling it
hmm.
a challenge. Because since there is not, if we are saying there is nothing defined as such across, it gives you the ability or it gives you the opportunity to design differently for different people. And then if and when, you can streamline it across and present it. Because another thing is that when people learn, they expect to learn Sanskrit in some other language. That's the other
Um,
aspect of it. Their
yeah,
expectation of learning Sanskrit is like, okay, I need to understand what, okay, if I have a word, like if I have some Danta Kurcha, what is that word called in English? First tell me that, or in Hindi or in Marathi. So, the approach of the learner itself will define those challenges sometimes. And that is why I look at it like an opportunity. Because I see, like, when I'm teaching, even in the beginner category, I also look at children who are Indian and non-Indian, like, or rather, if you say Indian origin but NRIs. So I
hmm,
see that, you when you are presenting to them as well, the approach has to be different. And if we have a fixed category, like if we look at it from a school perspective, yes, like Jagdish sir said, it would need a framework kind of a thing. But
right.
rather than putting a framework to it from that point of view, if we look at it like this, that the initial thing that you want to deliver is more
Hmm,
or less constant, because it's a language. So every
hmm,
language has its own structure. Huh? So one structure, the language itself has a structure. So it's just how
right,
you put the language to somebody. If you look at any mother tongue, how does it come? It comes by conversation. So the
right.
easiest approach, is to take a conversational approach. And Sanskrit Bharati, and they defined such beautiful techniques that are already there. And plus, everybody innovates with them, seeing the basic, the audience in front of you. So
Right.
that allows you to define it. Like when most of the languages are learnt in a phonetic way, like, you will say at mad, bat bat, cat cat. So we have that scope in Sanskrit also. You do baka, shuka, makha, whatever like that, and you can teach it. So it is like, I think, because there is no framework, we can define it. And then maybe like with people like Jagdish and, Aditi, who are on panels, we can put these forth and get them, so this no more remains like a so-called challenge, and it becomes an approach that you can use universally, actually, right? Because the initial phase, I would say, is getting the point across to them, and that depends on the teacher more.
Hmm,
It also depends on, it's not just the teacher, but how the teacher has approached the subject or the language herself or himself. The teacher's approach to that subject or language itself will, make that teacher or present his or her methodology, right? The pedagogy will be loose. But I think more than anything, what is the pedagogy that we have of education in our Upanishads? If we simply go by that, the story methodology, or you use the Prashnottara Paddhati, or you have the Charcha Paddhati. So there are different Paddhatis. So what works best for which category? It gives you that scope of identifying what methodology you can use. And once you pick that methodology, then you can say, okay, like for little children, like Aditi has a lot of expertise with little children, and she knows that singing, songs, stories, and all, go a long way in gathering their enthusiasm, right? But I would also say the same works for elders. So even for them, because when we, like at the certificate diploma course, we have a very heterogeneous group. But when you start with that heterogeneous group also in this manner, they once again become open to learning in a different manner. And that has to be for a very short phase of time. It should not be long drawn like for school children or other children. When you keep it short and then take it to the subject, they open up maximally to it, and their background allows you, to put it to them very easily later. So grammar and all doesn't become a thing. So since you asked me like what is the challenge you face, I make it a point to begin it like a bhasha. And once I take a little bit of the bhasha element, then I can automatically, I don't face that challenge largely because I begin from a bhasha and then take it to grammar. But it is very seamless. That's because maybe because our own understanding of how to approach a language and your own working on it as makes a big difference. Yeah. And you have to integrate. So the challenge I would say is for the teacher to be innovative more than the delivery. The teacher can be innovative in doing it. Yeah. So that's basically it.
And I think, ma'am, what is also brought about is because especially when you take a language like Sanskrit, now when you're teaching English, when you're teaching Hindi or Marathi, you are sure that in the society there is a community or a group of people who are using that as their day-to-day language. So it is being spoken somewhere. So people from that background would already have a background of that kind of language, etc. But when you come to something like Sanskrit, even it be traditional or orthodox families probably have lost in touch with speaking that language. So the language is still resting now only in stotras and verses and other things. So only at that level people have heard this language. So I think it's a very beautiful point that the challenge would be more or less the same with every student, because more or less if it's whatever background they come from, they're equally unaware of what that language is more or less. So the challenge more lies with the teacher in ensuring that it goes through to the student. I think that's a beautiful point. So Aditi ma'am, now especially now you mentioned about the pre-primary, right? So starting at that, speaking about that perspective. So when you deal with children, I think pre-primary itself has got many challenges for any subject probably. For the teacher, how do you ensure that you teach a subject to a child at that level? And especially when it comes to something like Sanskrit. So if you could elaborate on these aspects, what have you seen through your experience?
Uh, Actually, I have very positive experiences because, yeah, it is challenge, but I enjoy being with kids. So uh, I know what are their not weak points, but what does attract them. So we can say various games, activities, songs. So if we implement such things, they actually get engrossed in that process of learning, and they don't come to know that they are learning something. Automatically some words, some sentence formation is automatically absorbed by them, and when they go home they share those words, those sentences, and suddenly when we meet parents are astonished that my child is speaking so much in Sanskrit, even we don't understand. So this just happens.
Right. And ma'am, especially to you, I would like to ask, since you have been teaching also pre-primary and also the other students also you have teach, have you observed the learning capability significantly higher when you start the language early? Like for example, when you start in the pre-primary itself, those students, the way they pick up, those children, the way they pick up the language, and when you start teaching them later on in their life, right, as a student, primary, secondary student, what kind of differences have you seen?
We cannot actually say differences because every child has his own capacity. So, and I consider they have this equal interest in all these ages, all these age groups. So, if a teacher is very much successful to create that interest, to keep them engaged, to keep them engrossed, then the child is grasping the same thing, whatever he is doing in nursery level. The same thing happens in middle school or in junior college. So those who are interested in the subject, in the language, they can give the same result at any level.
Right. No, ma'am. My question was more from the perspective, like, for example, now, as Jagdish sir said, or we don't have this syllabus or we don't have this approach, of dealing with Sanskrit as a language. But since you have dealt with the pre-primary level also, where you typically start education there, so
Yes.
based on your observations, if you start a language at that level, especially Sanskrit, when you're starting for a child at that level, and you see the growth and you're slowly developing the language over a period of time, would you say like this is an ideal approach for Sanskrit, and that kind of a growth in that language, in the learning of that language also would be much better?
Obviously, if anyone is getting opportunity to start from that particular age, then that gives more good results, we can say, because we have observed the impact of Sanskrit in recovering, or in some problems people, kids having some problems regarding learning or
Hmm.
pronunciation problems.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
actually we didn't start with the treatment for such problems, but afterwards we got to know that they are grasping to overcome or to fight with these problems also. Like students who are totally disturbed, who were not able to concentrate, were not able to sit in one place, uh, they became calm after some time. Maybe others are reciting shlokas, others are singing songs,
Right.
but
Right.
that was affecting even these children who were not able to sit in one place. So
Right.
in
Right.
that case also, if we start the learning Sanskrit right from early age, then obviously it will give good result.
And ma'am, when you teach pre-primary children, what are the typical uh, the portions, or what do you exactly teach them? What aspect of the Sanskrit do you teach them? Is it speaking Sanskrit, identifying objects? So what all do you teach them during the pre-primary area, pre-primary stage?
Yes, obviously, as language, as Ruchita madam said, as we learn our mother tongue, so there is
Hmm.
no grammar explanation, no like literature wise explanation. It will be
Right.
stories.
Right.
And grammar, as we learn mother tongue, so
Right.
we repetitively take their practice to say aham gachhami, balakah gachhati, but we will
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
explain
Hmm.
what exactly is happening over here.
Right.
Similarly, vocabulary is introduced them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So uh, on both the parts, on both the levels, it happens, language wise,
Right.
and yes.
Okay. I think
Uh,
this is great. Yeah. Jagdish sir, you
Yeah,
wanted to
I
make a
want
point. Yeah.
to add Aditi madam's thought. If we teach Sanskrit or any language, there is a psychological analysis or assumption, or it is proven that till 6 or 7 years, child can learn more than 6, 7, 8, 10 language also.
Wow.
That is the
Wow.
psychologist proved already and experimented also.
Right.
Take an example. If you are in Maharashtra and you are living in Gujarati community, your mother tongue is Marathi, as well as you know some Malayalam, and your school medium is English. That child learning somehow 4 5 languages. In that
Right.
scenario, if you teach them Sanskrit, they are
Yeah.
literally absorbs fast, rather than when it's till 8th standard students come or 6th standard. whenever CBSE or ICSE or school board, और आपके जैसे जब elders को हम पढ़ाते हैं, they have their own language impressions and they compare their language Sanskrit to their own medium or whatever their own mother tongue. But that assumption pre-primary or primary kids don't have, because blank slate होता है, उसके ऊपर जल्दी लिखा जाता है. So भाषा संस्कार जिसको हम कहते हैं, Sanskrit language should be a sanskar, and that can be started from pre-primary itself, and same roadmap are given by Ministry of HRD in 2018 to NCRT, that from pre-primary level Sanskrit as a language, not as a language framework, but as a samskar we have to establish in our education system. So lot of thought are there, and lot of NGOs are like Sanskrit Bharati. Not only Sanskrit Bharati, there are other NGOs like I forgot the name. They are working on it. Secondly, when you are seeing the pedagogy, Sanskrit Promotion Foundation. I'm giving the example of Sanskrit Promotion Foundation, which is established as an NGO from 2016. They are working on the pedagogy, what should be there for various types of Sanskrit learners as per their needs. For the example, I am giving example beginner. My one of like you have an interest in Vedanta, and for Vedanta you are attracted to the Sanskrit. So we should frame the syllables Vedanta and Sanskrit Bhasha, or Tarka and Sanskrit Bhasha, or Sanskrit literature. I want only, my interest is one of my neighbor. She is doing her MA etc. from Bombay University, but she don't have interest at all in grammar and anything. She has an interest only in Vedanta. So when we are thinking about the pedagogy, it should be under the andrology. Andrology itself says that we have to see the बड़े एज के लोगों का क्या need है for learning, and accordingly we have to frame the syllables. Therefore, at the beginning I am said, nowadays Sanskrit is more teacher centric, not Sanskrit syllables or Sanskrit pedagogy is more the teacher centric. Teacher decides you want to learn this. Whatever you need, I will not think about that. You have a Vedanta interest, but I will teach first you Ramaha, Ramav, Ramaha. It should be no first. Then you go for Vedanta. So at the time, like adults learner, first interest of 50% we teacher only kills there. So we need to frame our syllables. At the time, if anyone have an interest in literature, or he want to know only Kalidasa. So while teaching the Kalidasa, only we can give him language inputs. In our tradition, there is a one proverb, Shatashlokena Panditaha. What do you mean that Shatashlokena Panditaha? पुराने जमाने में ऐसा था कि गुरु 100 श्लोक सुभाषित पढ़ाता था, लेकिन along with that 100 subhashit, student knows each and every grammar topic and he able to frame his essays, his speaking, his speech, etc. That type of approach we need to inculcate in our systems.
Ruchita,
I would like to just add something here. What Jagdish made is a very good point, is a nice point here. And there are 2-3 things that I'd like to say. One is basically there is a learning curve. We all know that there is a learning pattern. There is something called as a learning curve. It does not have to be from the psychologist point of view or a scientist point of view. Any learner. So even in our Shastra also, when we say Atma, Avare, Drashtavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya, what is he actually saying? We are actually putting forth the pattern to learning. So once you understand the pattern, then for everything, it's the same thing. Of course, the lag phase, the log phase of learning will be different for different individuals. But language which you absorb at the very first level, you absorb language, like Jagdish rightly mentioned, about learning couple of languages. That happens very easily when you are at the younger age. it's also the point of introduction of the language, like in some of our school boards across the country, the introduction point of the language is where we go kind of wrong. I wouldn't say wrong, but I would say that is
It
what
is
we
a,
need to change at
it
a
is a traditional.
phase
It is
where
a traditional, not
exactly.
a wrong. It is a very traditional and
See,
pathetic.
because there is the plateau. You plateau off at the age of about 10. When you introduce a language at the age of 10, you are at the
Right.
plateau for absorbing a language, whereas the
Yeah.
peak is between 6 to 10. So that's, or even 4 to 10. So the peak where you can learn lots at a faster pace, the pace as well as the amount is at that phase. Then it plateaus for a while. I'm not saying it is going to be stagnant. It plateaus for
Yeah.
a while. Then there is again a peak. So catching that becomes difficult, because for different children and
Yes.
people it will be different. But at the
Right.
initial phase, it's more or less the same. And that's how, when Aditi mentioned very rightly that at the earlier phase they are like sponge, they will just absorb, right? And another another aspect is, I've been doing this a little bit here about, I have a group of dancers, so I teach them Abhinay Darpan. So they want to learn Sanskrit, but for them, like Jagdish rightly said, they may not want to learn anything else. So I teach them only Abhinay Darpan. Then there is a group of doctors. There are a group of doctors. They want to learn Ayurveda, but they want only Ayurvedic point of view. So I teach them Ashtanga Hridayam. I don't have to teach them right like Deva, but from that itself they automatically get it. Then there's a group that wants to learn only Subhashitas. Okay, so take all the Subhashitas of different types, get them, and then through that you teach. So these really, it helps to hold on to, the student learns a lot because it's his or her interest area, and at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like then they want to learn that traditional way. Okay, let's go back and even learn that. That also they are ready to, because they get the essence of it, they like it, and then you give them anything, they are ready to take it. But of course, here you have to keep in mind the interest of the thing, because when the whatever you impart is student centric, the impact is totally different. If it is teacher centric, we kill a lot of it. And that's where the challenge is, that the teacher should constantly be herself or himself a student. Then you can give it the student way, like you say always, put yourself in that person's shoes and then deliver. So if
True.
you put yourself in that person's shoes and deliver, then it doesn't become teacher centric.
Perfect.
It becomes
Right.
a lot
Right.
like student centric.
And
Yeah,
that for teachers training should be there. We should have to develop a systematic approach of teachers training.
true, very true, very true.
Roadmap of Sanskrit. That document I am again referencing because it is a historical document in Sanskrit education system. They are given inputs that teacher training should be adopted by state government as well as HRD ministry, where Sanskrit teachers should be trained in one umbrella in one systematic manner.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is not there. It is a purely, whatever Sanskrit education system is going on, that is only will wish and strong wish and strong will of the teachers. Hats off all the Sanskrit
Yeah.
teachers
Yeah.
and
Yes.
their gurus also, those who are training the
Yeah.
teachers, कि
Yeah.
उनके ऊपर ही आज संस्कृत पूरा संस्कृत एजुकेशन सिस्टम डिपेंड है, not
Right.
is depending on the state or ministry.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that is
See, I'm giving one example. When
Yeah.
students pass 10th and they fill the online forms, they have to take Sanskrit, and we have some 4, 5, 6 colleges in Mumbai there, in junior college Sanskrit are there. So they coming back to school and asking Sanskrit teacher, I want to take Indruya. How that teacher of Sanskrit is there? For
Yeah.
other subjects they are not inquiring, but for
Yeah.
Sanskrit they are inquiring purposely, because
Yeah.
even though syllabus is student centric, we can say Bala Kendri or Vidyarthi Kendri, but methodology is teacher centric only. Take one example of Shakuntal. One Sahitya Shastra, scholar of the Sahitya Shastra, elaborating or explaining Shakuntala might be in different way, or one Vaiyakarani explaining Shakuntala might be in another way. So teacher के ऊपर ही बहुत कुछ है संस्कृत एजुकेशन और पेडागोजी में. So we want to create R.N. Dandekar like teachers like R.N. Dandekar, which is the epitome of Sanskrit scholars as well as the good teachers.
Right. No, I think one thing that struck me when all of you were mentioning your points is that as both Jagdish sir, you also mentioned, Ruchita ma'am, you also mentioned that if it is a lover of Sahitya, then you teach Samskrita through Sahitya. If it is a interested person in Ayurveda, then you are teaching Samskrita through Ayurveda. So this itself proves that our literature is so rich of Samskrita that you have for each of these interest areas itself, you can learn the language through the interest area, which is a
Yes.
very rare thing. I don't know whether
Correct.
other languages, how many of the other languages have this kind of an advantage, of learning language through their area of interest. And especially
Yes.
for India, because Sanskrit has been the language for so many thousands of years, we have most of our shastras in that language. So it is also an advantage for us from that perspective that you can bring
because
that. So this,
because of
yeah,
that, this language is developing the human and mankind. तो
correct, correct,
आदमी को डेवलप होने के लिए जो जो जरूरत है वो सब आप ये लैंग्वेज पूरी करता है.
right,
बस
right,
you have to believe on the language,
right.
just like
But
a god.
correct. But this actually brings me to another point, and Jagdish sir, you highlighted on that point, and also from the discussions we had. So there is a particular age group, for the students where probably a methodical teaching makes sense, where you start with Ramaha, Rama, Ramaha, then you go into this, then you slowly move step by step, and they're supposed to learn it that way. There is a age group where you are just starting with the language. As Aditi ma'am, you said, you are just talking to the people and to the children, and you're starting that language. And also the beginners, also you cannot many of the time start with Rama Rama because they are not interested in learning that. So when you have these varied groups, and Jagdish sir, when you spoke about having a system of teaching and a system of Sanskrit approach, it becomes so varied that it depends on the teacher a lot of times. Prescribing a format becomes difficult. How do you think all this are also these challenges in having a systematic way of Sanskrit education, or you don't see them as challenges?
No, these are the challenges, but just like Ruchita said, we have to convert these challenges because it's the need of the time into opportunity. Because when we are doing the SWOT analysis of overall Sanskrit education system, there are mainly two methods used to, that is a Patashala method as a traditional approach, and grammar translation method, which is known as a Bhandarkar method also.
Right,
But these two are not the methods of teaching. People's misconceptions are there. These are the methods of education. Bhandarkar method taught you to translation method, how to translate of any text. Okay. And Patashala method, that is a Gurukul method, where you have to by heart, you have to recite, and you have to go Khandanvay and Dandanvay Paddhati, etc. etc. When you research on the pedagogy of the Sanskrit, there are 22 methods of teaching. There are existence of 22 methods. So teacher have to decide in what level which method is we have to use. None of textbook is giving the methodology. Teacher has to find. Therefore, teachers training are very important. That is a one aspect of doing. This is a great opportunity nowadays in Maharashtra with the Kalidas University. There is a training sessions going on of Sanskrit teacher skill development. So what skills it should, किसने बताया है संस्कृत टीचर्स की क्या स्किल है, we have to fix. Being a good Sanskrit teacher at college level or university level, or this skill should be have. Correct. And it should be developed. So who should be developed? By us only, by universities only, by best. See, for English development, British Council is working rigorously with the help of government also, or non-government their own also. Right. Like IES Sanskrit Kendra is there, who from last 20 years developing the teachers for teaching their government textbooks or whatever state syllables. And there is a one Tirak Maharashtra Vidyapit who conducting Vasantik Varga in the May month, who are giving textbook inputs for the teachers. Right. But these two institutes are not enough to develop the teachers. For that, we have to conduct maximum teachers training
Right.
courses with good amount of the commercials. This is
Yes.
the one.
Yes.
This is the one aspect. Yeah, Sanskrit teachers, maximum Sanskrit teachers, when there is a high fee, they will decide. Means this is a in roadmap only. Uh, in document itself, survey or said there are some in states where senior college professor receiving junior college scale at government in India that is there yet, and secondary teachers receiving, if Sanskrit teacher is there, he is receiving primary teacher scale.
Hmm.
So approach of seeing towards the Sanskrit teacher also depends the pedagogical effectiveness. So
Correct.
teachers should
Correct.
be motivated on all such aspects.
Right. And just to take your point ahead, Jagdish sir, you highlighted a very important point, though that may not be the primary point of our discussion today, but it's a very important point in order to ensure that the teacher is innovative enough, in the pedagogy and the teaching technique, is that the teacher is motivated himself or herself. Now, I would like to ask, since Jagdish sir, you would have seen so many teachers during your teachers training process. Ruchita ma'am, you would have seen so many of your colleagues and other people, and Aditi ma'am, you also. Are these motivated? Because as far as I understand, especially for Sanskrit, for a particular age group, maybe it is still okay that you're going with some standard set of things. But for most of the people, when you're teaching Sanskrit, unless you are completely involved in the process, it very easily loses the connect with the students, and it's very difficult to put forth because already the people have a lot of preconceived notions about Sanskrit as a language. So they come with all these preconceived notions, so it becomes all the more difficult. So from whatever you have observed of your colleagues or teachers, do you see this motivation among teachers there amongst majority of them, or are they exceptions? That few teachers are great and they're doing great things, but most of the teachers are still running the normal course and they are like, "ठीक है, this is another
See,
subject, so I'm
basically,
teaching it."
what happens here, I think we have to understand that when this exists everywhere. It doesn't have to be only Sanskrit. It exists everywhere in any kind of teaching. It only gets
Actually,
highlighted in Sanskrit because the quantum is less. So if you look at English teachers, you might say there are 10,000 English teachers. When you
Yeah.
compare it to Sanskrit, you might be talking of just a hundreds or just about a mere thousand. So the point gets highlighted only because the quantum is less.
Hmm.
Otherwise, people as a whole, if you generalize, they are all of different types. You can't expect everybody to come with the same level, like in your music category also. I'm sure there are so many singers, there are so many doyens there, but everybody you can't compare because every individual is an individual. And yes, there have to be some who are self motivated, that comes with your background, it comes as an individual, it's your DNA, you can't change it. You can only tweak it a little bit here and there, just like your body's resting metabolism, you can tweak it, but you can't change it fully. You can,
Right.
motivate them externally to a level, but this is there for every single field, and there Sanskrit is not an exception. So I think, I mean, it would be, we would rather say ki among what is there, how can we best make, develop, use external media and other things to take care of this lacuna which is otherwise highlighted. When
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
when it comes to even student, a quantum of student, if you see SSC, because it's coming to the school and all that, that is why I'm bringing this point here. So if you
Yeah.
see 13 lakh students are giving XYZ subject, but if you see the number of lakh of students who are giving Sanskrit are maybe just 2 lakh, 3 lakh students or even less. So when you compare it, the statistics will obviously not match,
Hmm.
right? So it's like that about the
Right.
teacher as well. So
Right.
in that
Right.
case, all this unnecessarily gets hyped and highlighted, whereas it is like that about everything. You look at mathematics, you look at Ganitam, you look at physics, you look at anything, it's like that, right? So
Right.
how can we better take care of this lacuna by, because today we have to understand what a student
totally
is. If a
agree.
student has,
Totally agree.
yeah, if when a student has an auditory sense of learning and a visual sense of learning, why not
Hmm.
overcome the lacuna by using these? Today anyway everything is technology oriented. Even
Yes.
our discussion today is right. So why
Yes.
don't we use this best? And there you can use it for different category, the younger student, the older, whatever. Everybody has two ways in which they learn, either auditory, either visual, or auditory and visual combined. And I think if we look at the teaching learning process which comes from our Shastras in the Upanishads or anywhere, I think that kind of gives us the essence of all. It's like, a solution to most of our problems, because they are giving you so many ways. You have, like I said earlier, Prashnottara Paddhati is there. Like I said, there is Charcha. Then there is storytelling. So where you have to use what? Again, like Jagdish sir rightly said, that you can't, of course, the training has to be there. But again, everybody may not be a great storyteller, like let us say Subbu or Aditi madam or somebody. There may not be everybody who will be a great question, who will know everything to answer. So everybody has to undergo and upgrade themselves. This is very important. I think when the teacher keeps himself or herself in that position of a learner, constant learner, we can overcome any of the challenges. But like if you, and that pedagogical structure also is finally defined, will be right when it's a learner teacher who is making it, and not somebody with like a fixed set of looking at things. If you just go by Marathi Tami Manto Zapada Laun, if you just go by this approach, a convergent approach, you can't come up with the best thing, whether it's Sanskrit or anything. You have to have a divergent approach and then take that divergence and then converge it. That's when you can get the best out of it, because it has to be more encompassive. When it becomes encompassive, you can get all of it. Yes, now bring it together and come to that focal point, because ultimately where the focus goes, there the energy is going to flow. So we have to be able to focus on what we want, that is, the essence. What is it that we want out of it? A great pedagogical structure. Yes, then we have to focus only on pedagogy. Then we'll be able to come to that. But if we are, into too many other things of that, nitty-gritties of other things, then it doesn't happen. So the pedagogy, I think we have a solution in our Upanishad or in our traditional learning as the best. We have to just be able to take it, give it that look, that is today's look, because it has to be relevant. If we can make our Upanishadic one formula relevant to today, then I think it will work. It's acceptable to everybody. Who will defy it? Because ultimately you're showing relevance, right? If you can show the relevance and you can show that it works, like a storytelling method works. It works for everything. It doesn't have to be only Sanskritam. It can be Ganitam also. Where do they tell stories in Ganitam? If they did, we would not have so many dropouts in Ganitam, in mathematics. That they say these people have got learning problems in mathematics. Not many of them have. But unfortunately, it's not approached like that. So it's just that approach which we need to. We have it. We should be able to pick it from our Shastra, give it today's look, because yes, ultimately we have, like today, if you see, you have so many such in the last 3-4 years, Vartavali, etc., programs like these. You have Hindi, Marathi songs, given that Sanskrit thing. So people get attracted to it. Yeah, Aditi has done a lot of this like this in her college, in the Dhruva Mahotsav. She has done so many creative things like this, And Jagdish sir, if you would know, in his school, he has come up with so many such innovative ideas. But at the end of it, what's the base of it? Getting it to today's relevance. So what we did, like when I designed the Robomate platform for, along with for Sanskrit, when we put it together, we put animations, we put other things, but we gave it a visual as well as an auditory look. And I think the auditory is largely missing today. When we are looking at our challenges, Shravanam is missing. Like it is with listening in general as a human category, we are less of listeners, but that Shravanam is very, very important. And when you have the Shravanam there, when that Aika is there, when you keep listening to it, that's when you will be able to say it. But unfortunately, today we are not focusing on that. And this has been one of, I won't say my core areas, but something which I strongly work on is making them say, making them listen. Why? It's not ratta. It's not that, parrot learning. You have to have that listening. When you get it to, you hear it in a particular way. That's where our Santha is. Aren't we going back to our traditional pedagogy? Get the Santha there. Put in the Santha and you have it. You have solutions to it. Right? But what is there is, do we have problems or challenges at the school level? We need to understand this is the balance of time and syllabus, the balance of outcome and that technique. There is a mismatch there. What is the outcome we want from the thing? Today's textbooks are very nicely designed, because we now have we've always had good people at the textbook committee, but who are looking at it little differently, by taking those challenges. Challenges were there then, but they're now trying to give an approach to, a solution to the challenges. So by doing that, what has happened? The volume of the syllabus and what do you want? What is the deliverable? If there is a match between that, you can do it. You cannot expect a 8th standard or a 10th standard child to come out as a Pandit of Sanskrit. If that is your deliverable, it is going to be a constant failure, right? So keep the syllabus that much that the child is triggered. What we are stopping is the child's what we would say, swadhyaya. Okay, we say na acharyat padam adatte, padam shishya swamaidaya, kalena padam adatte, padam sa brahmachari bhi. What we are doing is depending on 100% to be obtained from the teacher. Whereas whatever best way you use, you can learn only 25, get only 25% from the teacher. We are wasting or not allowing, not tapping 75% of learning of our Sanskrit language, and we are expecting 100% result. So only when we allow for the remaining 75% to be developed, Kala, where is Kala going? Syllabus after syllabus after syllabus. Allow it to sink. Where are we allowing for Sir Brahmachari bhi? We don't have Brahmachari, but our school student mates, where are they? Are we allowing that kind of interaction? And Swadhyaya is merely restricted to homework. I mean, I'm diverging from that because the topic got diverged, so I'm just taking it ahead. But in any system, if we remember that learning process is by these 4 methods, and only 25% can be obtained from each, we understand the value of that 25%. That's when we will actually be able to get 100% learning. We all can get it in.
Yeah, yes. Ma'am, this brings to an important point that in classroom or the teacher-student learning, as you rightly said, the 25% that comes during that process, the remaining 75% is probably outside the classroom. What is the child doing after that? And this is where I would like to come to you, Aditi ma'am, because I know that you have been part of this Dhruva kind of events where you generate this kind of a creativity amongst this language itself, right? And hosting these different events. So not just the school part, but even as a game, as an event, the child is really excited to take part. Every year it wants to take part in these activities. So if you could tell something about that. So what are the different aspects in which you try to create interest in the language through these kind of events? If you could share your experience around that.
Actually, our teaching methodology should be according to the age group, isn't it? As in pre-primary, we used to sing, dance, play games physically. Here in teenagers, they when they get opportunity to show their skills, they get interested in that particular area. So when students came to me with this idea that we will have something like fest, because all colleges have their fest, like Ruya has Utsav, Vaze, our college has Dimensions. So can we have something like this where different performing arts or different areas will be highlighted, but in Sanskrit? So that idea was really nice. And now this is our 5th year where we are trying to give different events like singing, dance. These are very common because mm, some songs or verses are there which can be performed. But along with these traditional events, we try to frame quiz or treasure hunt like event, which is very famous, very dear to all teenagers. They actually love to play treasure hunt. So nearly 8 to 10 events are there every year. And the team, volunteers team, which I have, in that team, it is not necessary that a student has learned Sanskrit, maybe in school or in college. But those who have not at all learned, they are not at all familiar with Sanskrit, but they have some other skill. If he is good in using technology, any or anchoring, may it be anchoring, but they can prepare anchoring in Sanskrit and they can present because they are good anchors. So in this way, they are using their skills and they are getting connected with Sanskrit. And this, whatever is happening, that happens forever. These memories they take with them for lifetime, and they are connected with me also through this Sanskrit forever. So that is great gain for me.
I think amazing. Unfortunately, this is a topic I am sure even when we had our initial discussion, we knew that it's never going to end within a specified time frame because it's about such a language that requires a lot of deliberations. And also, it was very clear even when Jagdish sir started his initial points on this lack of framework itself. I think it set the tone to the fact that this is where we are today. Now, with this, what all are the different things that we can do? So I think the background is quite clear, I think, to everybody who have listened to this conversation. What is the background in which the Sanskrit education is being imparted today? So that even if there is a teacher who is teaching, there's also something that needs to go behind the mind that she or he is teaching, devising a technique of his or her own, to ensure that the language reaches not by any dictate or a mandate, coming from here that this is the portion that you need to complete. So I think a fantastic 1 hour, I would say, with all of you. What came out very clearly, if I were to just summarize a few things of what we discussed, some of the things that came out very clearly, I think Aditi ma'am brilliantly brought out the point of this early primary, what you call as early child education in the normal education parlance. So that early child education in Sanskrit, how do you start that? And probably this is a forgotten system that we had in the past, where we had this kind of things, but it got lost in the middle. So early child education system through Sanskrit, how do we start that so that it gets ingrained into everybody right from the childhood part? That is one aspect that we saw. The second aspect that we saw is about, as Jagdish sir said, about a systematic approach. If you're starting from the early child education till you're progressing, what do you teach at every stage? What are the contents that you can teach? So deliberation around that. The third aspect around that, how much ever you try to define a syllabus, the language is something that needs a lot of creativity and innovative approach from the teachers. So how do you ensure that the teachers are suited to do this kind of a job? How do you train them? How do you skill them? How do you make it really attractive for them to ensure that they have the right inputs coming in at different points of time? And probably I think Sanskrit is one language which has got this rare privilege of where the beginners who come at later stage in life into this language are much more than you would see in any other language. So which also presents its own set of excitement and everything into the teaching process. Because as Ruchita ma'am, you said, then they're already, their mind is formed to a particular area. Now you have to try to inject the language through that, interest area, which presents another set of a challenge and opportunity, as you rightly said, looking at it as an opportunity. How can you now devise a new technique? So I would just say that just as the language of Sanskrit is eternal, I think the teaching techniques are also so varied and innumerable that each person has to define more. But I think with people like Jagdish sir, you're there in these kind of committees and boards, and you're doing the right kind of initiatives you're taking to ensure that this comes through. I think in due course of time, these will, I think, fix up properly, so that, and of course, the enthusiasm and interest is not going down. Probably it's just building as the person is aging. His love for Sanskrit is only going up. He feels interested in Sanskrit later in life, may not be the early part. But I think we had a fantastic discussion around this, and a very beautiful set of thoughts and ideas that have come up. Probably we'll plan to have some more deliberations in the future, taking up some specific ideas or specific topics of what we discussed today. So today the objective was more of a brainstorming to at least bring to perspective for the people what are the different aspects of Sanskrit teaching in general. But there are many more things to be discussed in each of these areas with all of you. Probably this is for a later time and for a later session. I would like to thank all of you for this wonderful deliberation that we have today. And I hope all the audience, they like the session, and we shall have a follow-up very soon on this. Thanks a lot to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dhanyawadaha.
Dhanyawadaha. So, dear listeners, I think all of you would have enjoyed the session today. It's a very rare kind of panel discussion where you're talking about a language that has got so much interest in the society amongst people, but you see the challenges, or you see the varied set of expectations of the learners that the teachers have to deal with. But I think, as one of the panelists said, it is the innovation and the creativity and the interest with which teachers are still teaching this language is what is keeping this language alive, despite we having such a long tradition of this language in our country. So hopefully now we'll come up with many more such deliberations, many more such interesting discussions in the future. Until then, keep watching Subhu's Corner on FB page as well as the YouTube channel. Many more one-to-one discussions as well as such panel discussions we will plan to have in the future. So until then, See you. Goodbye.